that is there for the hotels, but for multifamily residential. So the goal with that was to try to build a product that's multifamily that would never be Airbnb property throughout the city. That process got approved, and the waiver was granted by the city last year after reviewing the plan. Then we've been in process with our engineers and team of architects and everyone else to get here tonight working with your staff on the development agreement that's before you all. And so that's just a long way of saying that we've been working very collaborative with the city throughout the process. And we're really here just to answer any questions that you guys have. We believe in the area. My family's been here in Brevard County, I can't say forever, but since the 60s. And, the Cocoa Beach is in our veins, if you will. Our partner on the project, Mr. Nick Herring, is here with Framework Group. They will be the multifamily developer for that portion of the site, as that's their core competency in business that they've been doing around the state. And so, all the pretty drawings and all that you see, that's his team. But we're here to answer questions. Most of you people know the site better than most. It's Cocoa Beach is a tight-knit community, and the history of the site, what it was before, and hopefully the planning board agrees with the view of what it can be in the future. But thank you. If you have any questions, happy to answer them, or let Mr. Herring speak to the extent you guys have any questions for him.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, I'm hard of hearing, so if I step forward, it's because I can't hear.
Yeah, is this for rental or are these for sale?
These would be rental communities, but it would not qualify under what is considered a short-term lease for the transient bed tax purposes. So I think, Nick, is it 6 months and a day minimum, or are you guys anticipating a full year on the lease?
7 months minimum, but most of it would be 12 months.
So it's anticipated these are going to be residents of the community, not temporary guests that are coming in and out. And their kids will go to school here. They'll be in the fabric of the community, not your weekend warriors that come over.
Yeah, I went to the meeting, I guess, where it was approved, and then at that time, it was thought that it might be residential to attract Space Center workers, young ones, but I didn't know if that implied that was supposed to be condos for sale, or, like you say, these are designed to be shorter term.
Not short-term rentals. They would be rental properties, but within
7 months.
They would be residents of Cocoa Beach, as far as like if you're talking about voters and that type of stuff.
Okay.
And we hope that he can attract the Space Center employees back and live in our community again. That was a fantastic time. So.
Have you gotten so far as to decide the mix of the 3-bedroom and 2-bedroom?
That would be a Mr. Herring question, as he's on the multifamily side.
I'm Nick Herring with the Framework Group. As Cole mentioned, we're development partners on the property. We're still working through the unit mix, but it will be a combination of studios, 1s, 2s, and 3s. Probably on the larger side, 2s and 3s.
Is that 1,500 square feet like an average of those, or is each unit limited to 1,500 square feet?
That was working with the commission. That was the average size of the units. Had to be, I forget if it's 1,500 or 1,600, but whatever that was negotiated with the city council at the meeting on the variance process. Yes, ma'am.
Also, I can't tell by the way, this was a fabulous presentation. My compliments to whoever put it together. It was really, really well done.
Thank you.
I can't tell from the site plan or the rendering here is this going to be gated, these areas coming in specifically into the site? Because you're going to have a lot of activity of people going to restaurants. Yeah, go ahead. Going to restaurants, these areas that go directly into the residential portion of the property.
It's not intended to be gated, certainly not in here, but the garage itself would be access controlled for the residents.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you explain, was the commissioners, did they just approve a variance for the density, or was it a lot more than that? I know in the, I guess it's Exhibit B, it says that there were a whole series of things, the setbacks and landscape signage and all that was, it reads like it was all approved by the commissioner.
No, ma'am, the commission approved the variance for the density. The benefits of the PD district, and this was working with the prior planning staff, is you essentially create your own regulations within that PD. And so that's where those other numbers within that development agreement came from. Those were ones that worked with, most of them are what's already within the city code, and we just put them in there, just so that there were clear standards, so there's no gaps in what's allowed. But no, the city council approved the variance with the restrictions on not allowing any short-term rentals and requiring a concern that the units would be too small. So they wanted to make sure that they were of a certain size.
I see that in, I'm getting down into the exhibits a little bit.
It's okay.
That one uses the term short-term rentals, like you're saying, and then the other one has prohibiting transient lodging and vacation rental usage. Are they supposed to be the same, or is there a difference between the two when you're saying that?
I'm a terrible drafter. The intent was that they're the same, that there's no one that's going to be staying less than the 6 months, I believe it's a state statute, that would trigger the need to collect bed tax. That's the intent.
So I recognize, the transient lodging and vacation rental usage, that makes, we define all that, but the short-term rentals, I don't know that we define those, so just the terminology
Yeah,
is.
it needs to be
Okay,
consistent.
but there's
I
no
agree with you on
intent to be
that.
different between the two, right, when you wrote that?
We'll work with the city attorney on that. So good catch, thank you.
Would you say the height that you're conceptualizing there is the absolute height?
Yeah, we have no intent to come before the city and ask for any sort of touching that third rail of Cocoa Beach politics, so to speak. Sorry, I've been here for a lot of those.
Yeah. And then also, parking spaces, I'm not familiar with these sizes, but they say it could be either 9 by 18 or 10 by 20.
Sure.
What's the difference between the two? And
So the 9 foot is a more modern size. It's a little tighter parking lot, and what we tried to utilize with those was inside the parking garage structure, where it's going to be a little tighter, is that allows us to get a little bit extra parking internal there that's not visually out there creating a sea of parking, other than what kind of we need to help the restaurants function. The site is overparked compared to what is actually required by code, and that was so that we provided maximum flexibility and kind of it's overparked because we were taking advantage of that 9 foot, and that's what the engineers say with those engineered parking structures works best for them. I'm as bad of a drafter as I am. I'm an even worse engineer, so I don't have more for you on that one.
how would the restaurants be managed? Would that continue to be a part of the property managed by your company, or would that be sold off?
So we would anticipate having restaurant operators who would, we're not restaurateurs. We would have independent restaurant operators. Now, whether they are leased or sold off, it's to be determined. We've talked with several restaurant entities that some of them have expressed desires to go either way. And really, once we know kind of what we have as far as the city approvals, then we're able to really sit down and negotiate with those, various folks. Some brands can only come into a market if they own their own land. It's just the way their finances work. We would prefer to own them ourselves and keep them, just because that's the model of how we develop. But sometimes, we don't get everything we want when they have the desire to be in the market and the checkbook.
Can you give us a brief overview of how you anticipate the traffic is going to be handled
Sure.
within the site?
Talking with the traffic engineers, there are going to be improvements that have to be made on the FDOT's right-of-way, which is that side access road along 520. We expect that upon total build-out, there will be a need for some sort of improvements within the 520 major, probably another traffic light or some sort of traffic measure that is approved by FDOT. They've already looked at the initial site plan. They recognize that depending on kind of where the futures of cars go and how everyone's driving versus Uber and that type of stuff moving around and whatever other public transportation comes into the area, that it will trigger what's called a traffic light warrant. And then, the developer would have to put that in before getting their CO.
Right. It's become very fashionable now to have golf carts and electric bicycles and electric tricycles, and are you anticipating that and planning for any parking for those?
I saw your next item on the agenda tonight, and it did make me think about that. We're certainly going to be putting in bike parking spots and access throughout the areas, mainly for the restaurants from our perspective. I would assume Mr. Herring is going to have the same for their units. As far as golf carts go, I haven't thought much about it because you all police the streets. 520 is a pretty busy road to have a golf cart on. Now, if they're on the access road, that's dependent on what you all do tonight and the city council does. We certainly wouldn't say, no, you can't come in here so long as it's legal under y'all's, codes.
I would just suggest that if you do anticipate putting any golf cart spaces, they be designed so it's a pull-in straight, because they can't parallel park.
Yeah, or very difficult to.
Right.
Not very good power steering on this.
But with regards to this, under utilities D, about the cost sharing, says if the city requires utilities, roadways, or public access features of greater capacity or size than required by the project, the city shall be responsible for cost sharing the difference and shall reimburse the developer for that amount if the developer constructs the improvements under such written terms as determined prior to the construction of such improvements. I was wondering what kind of conversations you maybe had with the city and if you've identified a possible cost if that happens.
So,
Or maybe,
so the way we would
it could happen
anticipate,
or
sorry, I
not.
didn't mean to interrupt. The way we would anticipate is that if there are improvements that need to be made, that we would make them and then seek reimbursement out of the transportation impact fees that are generated from our own project. We don't anticipate coming to the city asking for, you guys to write a check to us. That would be working in conjunction with the city, the county, and us on what's called a prop share agreement on how those transportation impact fees are used to reimburse the developer. I think that was the intent of your question, is we're not going to come into the city asking for a check.
It was more or less if you've had any conversations, if you anticipated something like that. And, I was just kind of, wondering if the city gave a feel for whether or not they could shoulder that kind of a cost or not. But, it may not even happen, but is there a possibility, that we'd have to ante up something possibly?
We haven't, as everything we've heard, there's plenty of capacity in the sewer and the water for our site there. The only thing that I think would be where we would be looking to would be the transportation impact fees, if and when that something is warranted there, which we'll know before we go to CO. But I've been doing this a lot of years. I've never seen a city come out of the pocket for not just Cocoa Beach, but any of them for those types of improvements.
I just have some questions. At 220 units, what were your price points for those units starting? You said, families would be moving in, are any going to be designated for people who don't make six figures a year?
That's Mr. Herring. I don't know what his market studies say on the pricing.
Yeah, this is what we call a market rate development. So there won't be any income restricted units or anything tied to median income or anything like that. You know, this is a pretty premier location, so the rents are going to reflect that. It's very early to quote any rents or anything of that nature.
Okay, second follow-up question, I actually have 4. Have you guys done a school impact analysis already? Or is that in the next phase?
What analysis?
School impact.
Analysis?
No, what we have asked is there capacity at the schools? And right now, what we were told, sorry if I can't hear me, I went in front of the microphone, is that there's capacity at the Cocoa Beach schools, and in talking with some of the commissioners, they really would like to see the residents here, because not having the residents runs a risk of a local school getting shut down because there's not enough going to it.
Yeah, that was my follow-up question about the pricing, kind of go hand in hand.
Sure.
And then, so besides just talking to commissioners, because I represent the school board, are you gonna be submitting anything to the designer and planner for the school board for a school impact analysis?
So we will submit for concurrency.
Okay. Yeah.
I can tell you that typically in our apartments, we don't have a lot of school-age children. It's just sort of how it works out. So we tend to have a very light impact in reality, on the school district, but understood all the same. We need to go for concurrency and follow the rules and pay our share when it comes to things like impact fees. So.
Okay. Third, I heard a little bit of talk about traffic study and stuff. Is there any possibility that there could be an overhead walkway for pedestrians?
Now, that might get to where we're talking about the city having to come out of pocket. No, I understand. It would be nice. It's horribly expensive to go overhead on an FDOT right away, and a project of this size, we just couldn't
Because it's a
absorb
very
it. And,
busy,
Yeah.
fast-moving road.
and we anticipate that the traffic, or the foot traffic that is coming from our project, would hopefully utilize improved sidewalks along the FDOT right-of-way, and then cross over without crossing 520, but maybe cross A1A as they're going to the beach. Now, to the extent they're going to cross 520, we will certainly encourage them to go to the medians.
Well, there's bus stops along
Yeah.
the way. So. And then last question. I read a little bit through your sustainability stuff. Are you going to have any solar or geothermal or charging stations for car? Like
That's a good
what kind
question.
of impact are you looking to reduce for the people who are going to be living there and using
So
it?
the low impact development standards typically focus on the stormwater management and treatment. And so those are, I'm not going to say low hanging fruit because they're more expensive than just other options.
It's not going above and beyond that.
Right, but we are committed to doing them, and, look, I live here on this lagoon, I'm tired of seeing it the way it is, and so we're committed to that. As far as, the solar goes, that would be, Mr. Herring, speaking on that on the department
Sure.
side.
The apartments will be green building certified. Every one of our developments is. We do strive to go above and beyond on that because the Florida Energy Code does get us to a pretty efficient building, but we like to get it certified. We like to shoot for silver and gold on those things. So this development will be treated the same as our others. There will be charging stations for electric cars. We'll have bike storage, as Cole mentioned, and just by virtue of high density urban multifamily development, this is pretty green, when it comes to development standards. So. And we do those extra things, like I mentioned, to make sure it's extra green.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
And you have such nice amenities around there in the walkway, and how much of that is like open to the general public? Like, can people go out there and fish and stuff like that off of your docks?
Well, that's a,
'Cause it's a
that's
big
a
fishing
thorny
area.
question. Not that we would oppose people that are responsible doing it necessarily, but when you start having some multifamily on the backside, we anticipate that being private to the multifamily side. The areas that are along the western shore and kind of the curvature along the restaurant there, I'm going to call it quasi-public. It's still private property.
Yeah.
But look, those restaurants have an incentive to have life there and people around, and as long as they're being responsible, I'm sure that they're going to want them there. One of the hesitations we have on making it public is that when someone's not being the model citizen or won't move on or is causing a scene, it's a much bigger challenge to manage as a property owner. Because then we have, look, I'm not going to go into all the rules that happen with that,
So
but
basically, it's public, really intended mostly for the restaurant.
mostly for the guests of the restaurants, but
And everything else is pretty much for the
for the
residents.
the residents along the canal, that provides a little bit of privacy towards the people on the other side of the canal, so you don't have the massive public kind of walking back there. They won't have public fishing on that, but like those restaurants are going to, I presume, are going to be fine with somebody fishing there as long as they're behaving. And we do see it being an open space that'll be amenity to the community.
I have a question, it might be for you. I think, do you have to notify the public in writing or anything that are in that adjacent area, like across the water on the west side? Or is that just for if it's a variance to the height? Like at some point, there's something in it, if it goes over the 45 feet, then you gotta notify
Can I just make a
in
comment?
writing the people who are in the surrounding area. I don't know if
There
this
was a
qualifies.
city commission meeting about this, 6 months ago, 7 months ago? And at that time, the neighbors from across the canal were there speaking about it, and that was at the hearing for making this compatible with the hotel density
Correct.
statistics. So they already kind of,
So they've-
and I'm sure they're going to have it again.
They
when it
have
gets
been,
to the-
or they did get notified. I just want to make sure that that was kind of,
And I'm
We
sure
intend to
they'll be there
comply with
again.
the city standards on height to the extent that that was the concern.
I didn't know if there was one for density, I just don't remember. Okay, thanks.
Are those docks gonna have boat slips for residents, or is that for people using the amenities?
We anticipate that being for the restaurants. And if the restaurants have some boat operators, tour boat operators, something that we want to work in conjunction with, and again, it goes back to that responsible behavior standard. Yes, we would encourage those people to come. What we don't want to do on the docks is, again, make them public so that someone can come and tie up, and we end up being the new derelict boat dumping spot for, the Indian River Lagoon. So it's intended for day boaters to come in by
We can
boat
just go
from.
40 feet down the way and do that.
How stringently would you stick with the retail operations being restaurants? I mean, let's say you couldn't attract a suitable restaurant operator. Are there contingencies for other uses?
We haven't even considered other uses really on it. We just think it's such a premier spot for the restaurants, and we've had a lot of interest in it, frankly. But look, the world can change. People, I don't know what make us stop from going to restaurants, like a pandemic or something. But we think that outdoor dining area with that view is going to always attract a restaurant tenant. If it doesn't and it remains vacant, we know that we'll come back to this board. It may not be all the same people on it, but we would come back to this board and the city and explain why we can't attract a restaurant tenant there. And then if we have to amend the agreement, we would ask for that if there's another tenant that comes along.
Any other questions?
I think I have just one more comment on, I understand that this is all a draft and it looks good. There's one section in the master development plan that's like exhibit B, I guess paragraph 8 on the master development plans. It says that the project is located in the planned development district, which offers a developer and designer maximum flexibility to deviate from the traditional zoning standards and requirements. I don't really know that that's the intent.
That was your city attorney's language for.
Maybe the attorney is like, it's more like, there's a whole section in 2-26 on the intent of a planned development, and it's not so that they can not use the requirements. It's, a lot more than that. That's
Yeah,
It's not intended to be like, oh, we don't have to follow the guidelines. because
Yeah,
it's-
exactly. And I didn't draft this agreement. This was Becky Vos that worked with the applicant in getting this together. But I think that language was just referencing the fact that plan developments allow developers flexibility within the framework of the agreement itself. And then moving forward through that, if any amendments have to, come back to council, or the commission rather, they're able to do that within the framework of the agreement. So.
I have a couple of questions, and these are probably directed more for Tanja. Tonight, we're considering the rezoning of the property from, I can't remember, Gateway to PD.
Yes.
But this will come back before the board for site plan approval review, considering that it's over 50,000 square feet. Is that correct?
I'm trying to clarify that with the city attorney. As far as what I've heard from her today, in her opinion, this is not a site plan approval.
Okay. Yeah, because there is nowhere near enough detail in this. I mean, we've got utilities connecting to the transmission line that comes from Cocoa over. We've got inadequate
Yes, this is.
transportation. We've got the whole site being completely covered up with I did not see anywhere in here we're talking about compensating, cut to compensate for raising it up out of the floodplain, none of that kind of stuff.
Absolutely, this is not the engineering plans or drawings, none of this is all conceptual. And even if it didn't come back before the planning board, which again, I think from what I heard from Becky tonight, that it will, even if it didn't, it would have to go through engineering, and that was one of the things that was put in the development agreement. It would go through permitting and engineering review, and all of those issues would be addressed at that time with city staff.
Okay, because I think it's 50,000, anything over 50,000 square feet has to come back before the
Yes.
board for site plan approval.
3 acres or 30.
Okay.
Now Tabitha talked to Becky directly, so maybe you have additional comments on that?
No, she just kind of followed up in the email stating that for tonight, we are looking at the rezoning from Gateway to Plan Development and then reviewing recommendation for the development agreement with any kind of changes you might need, kind of like how the streamlining the language a little better to short-term transient, those kind of things is what we're looking at tonight.
Okay.
And we know that there's more detail needed on the engineering, but without knowing that the project has the zoning in place, it's hard to cut loose. It's a high six-figure number to get all of that planning done.
Yep. Good. Any other questions? Anyone from the public would like to speak that hasn't already spoken? All right, so I think we're
Thank you.
finished with the
Yep,
hearing.
we can close the public hearing now, Chair, and bring the discussion up to the board.
All right, do I have a motion?
Sample motion is on page 7 of the briefing, if you guys need that.
I'll make a motion that's a little changed from
Okay,
what's
yeah.
written there, just
Yeah.
kind of getting at your point, I had the same question, but for the proposed plan development at 375 West Cocoa Beach Causeway, I move to forward the development master plan to the city commission with the recommendation of approval to rezone from Gateway to plan development and the drafted development agreement with noted changes. So basically narrowing down the approval.
Okay. Did you get that, Tab? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any additional comments, concerns from the board? All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Say no. All right. Passes 4-0. Next up, number 2, Code of Ordinances, amend chapter, 15? Is Section 15-47, operation of golf carts on public roads and streets.
Okay, so, this project went before the golf cart, well, actually, micromobility device task force, and they made some recommendations to the city commission, and myself and Becky went through our code and responded to those recommendations, and basically this is the proposed amendment to the code, as well as the actual opening of the streets to golf carts will go through a resolution process. So this is the map that we are anticipating to take forward to the city commission as to the roadways within the city of Cocoa Beach that will be allowed to use golf carts. Did you have any questions?
I do. In this highlighted area with the proposed change, yes, is this to suggest that if you're under 18 and you have a learner's permit, you can drive without an adult?
Yes.
So-
This is, we actually looked at the Florida State Code, and they just updated that portion of their code as well, because previously it was 14, so they increased the age limit, but you would still have to have a learner's permit.
It's been a while since I learned how to drive, but I did teach my son how to drive, but I know there was like so many windshield hours we're supposed to have before he could qualify to get his own license. Do you know if, I mean, I'm not sure how to plug that into what I'm trying to point out here, but so this doesn't matter whether or not they've had windshield time, just that they're in the learner's permit phase?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Right.
I'm a little confused when I saw that state law about that. I was a little confused about that. I've always heard that for an automobile, when you have a learner's permit and you're driving with a learner's permit, you have to have a licensed driver in the car with you. Is that the same thing here?
No,
Well,
because it's
doesn't
not
actually
considered
defeat
an
the purpose.
The language in G is identical to the House Bill 949 that just updated that language.
Yeah, I
So
just saw that.
That's exactly what the state has written.
It's
for their
insane.
minimum standards.
yes. So this is what's going on across the state, and we just wanted to bring our ordinance into conformance with that, as well as allow for additional opportunities for people to utilize golf carts in the city of Cocoa Beach.
Do we necessarily have to do what the state says?
Or can we go stricter?
Or can we just do, I mean, is there a home rule situation that we can enforce here?
My internet's out on my computer. I can't pull up the bill right now, but generally, it's difficult to go more strict when the state puts in specific parameters, specifically with the operation of golf carts or any motor vehicle on a public roadway. So I think the intent of, and Tanja can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the intent of mirroring the new state statute was to come into conformance because, we don't want to mess around with
Yes.
any preemption issues.
Absolutely, because at the time of the previous writing of this code, it was, as you can see, 16 years or older, and that was pursuant to state statute. So we are updating our code to make sure that we are within that state statute as well.
Like, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm concerned about it from a standpoint, because it says 18 years of age or older with a valid form of government-issued photographic identification. So if my license has been suspended, and I've got an ID that says it's for ID purposes only, I can get in a golf cart and I can go out there and drive.
Yes.
That's terrifying.
Well,
be
obviously,
honest.
whoever directed this hasn't been to Vieira.
Yeah.
It's insane. I mean, it's really insane up there. With the kids driving the golf carts like all over the place.
Yes. And I think that is one of the reasons that they upped the age, because the state had 14, we had 16. Now we're saying 18, or having that learner's permit phase. At least we know those citizens or young adults will be in the process of learning about the driving requirements. If you have a permit, you've probably read the driver instruction manual at least at that point, and you may be taking some classes at school. So you will have some idea of what you're supposed to be doing when you're on the roadway.
Again, my grandmother never drove a car. She had a government-issued ID that said that so that she could get on a plane. I would not want her out driving on the beach.
Now that is the part, I agree with you. That part was a little bit more concerning to me as well, but that's what the state, decided, so.
So basically, your map here is showing you can't even cross Orlando and Atlantic.
No, because the state has specific requirements for crossing state roads. So even you see on 520, no crossing at that area either. And we haven't met those specific requirements to cross state roads, so we decided not to go in that direction at all at this time. However, maybe in the future, we'll be bringing it back for once we look at how we can meet those requirements.
I wanted to say, the way this is written looks like if you're over 18, you need a photographic ID, but if you have a learner's permit, it doesn't read like you need to carry it with you. It's just the way the sentence is constructed. Maybe that needs to be made clearer.
Well, it says with a valid form of government issued photographic ID. So I'm understanding that to mean that you have to have it with you.
It does say with a valid learner's.
Yeah.
We haven't, I will say we haven't drafted anything in terms of violations or citations or things of that nature that would take place within the code. So I think at that stage, we may be able to deal with that a little bit more, but this is just really the golf cart ordinance. So like fees, fines, or permits, things of that nature will have to be dealt with a little bit further down the road. Yes.
Did you guys talk about what kind of signage you would propose, like, to keep people from crossing A1A and going on the prohibited
Yes.
streets? I mean, you're gonna put them so that they're, like, at every crossover, like, you would know?
Yes, there will be some signage. We took a look at Cape Canaveral. They did a study and they showed the type of signage that they were planning to use. So we think we're going to adopt that same signage that they had. And it seems like it's a statewide sign that you see in most communities. So we want to kind of make sure that when people are using golf carts here, if they've used them somewhere else, they're seeing the same language as they go through our city as well.
And I know they're for roads that are 30 miles an hour or lower. Golf carts used to be, I know there's all kinds now, and many are a lot more jazzier and souped up than they used to be, but they used to be like 15 miles an hour was like the max they could go. So did you guys talk about, like, in the 30-mile-an-hour zone, people driving 15 miles an hour? It's just frustrating for the people who are behind them. There's no place, like on
We did not talk.
Minuteman, there's a lot of people who are in a hurry, and if they can only go 15 or something like that, you're gonna be holding up. And I know there's a statute that you can't really hold up traffic. So it's not that they're going too fast, because I think there aren't very many that go super fast, but did you talk about going too slow?
We
It's
did
super
not, we did not
frustrating.
discuss that at all. Again, all of these streets are more of our local streets, which seem to be, even though they're posted at 30, seem to be pretty slow. I have gotten behind a golf cart myself recently and realized how slowly they move.
Yeah, like-
And having that golf cart, it was actually in Orlando, and they kind of stayed over to the right, so I was able to go around, but
I'm
That
thinking
would be
mainly
good.
Minuteman and Brevard are probably the fastest, and there's no intent for people to pass on those roads, but because of the golf carts, I've done it, and other people have done it, and I've seen it. If they're really going that slow, which some do, and maybe as fast as they can go, but I don't know if there's like a minimum, like they have to go at least 20 miles an hour to be on these roads, or 25. I don't know if they're on a 30 mile an hour road. I know there's a Florida statute that most people are worried about the speeding part, but there is something that says you can't hold up traffic to normally people normally go in the speed limit or whatever. You can't go too slow to hold up traffic. So I don't know if that's a problem for us. Again, I don't know the current state of golf carts, but they used to be pretty slow, like 15 for a purpose. Like probably the ones on this only go 15, I'm guessing.
we talked about golf carts that went up to 25 miles per hour.
Yeah.
So that's what we were anticipating, up to 25, because once you go over 25, you have to get registered with the state and become street legal.
Street legal, yeah,
Yeah,
those are
so-
good. Street legals would have no problems with it.
Yeah,
I just-
well, we couldn't because it would be state registered,
Right.
and they'd be able to do, drive on the roadways.
Yeah, this doesn't even apply to street legal.
No, this does not apply to street legal. This applies to anybody with a golf cart who wants to go out and, say hi to their neighbor or go up the street and get an ice cream on a golf cart. They would be able to do that in the city of Cocoa Beach.
So hold on, when we talk about street legal, if you have a license plate and insurance, you're street legal, and you can go on A1A?
Yes.
You have to have lights and blinkers and.
Yeah, there's some state requirements there. They definitely have to go over 25 miles per hour. I'm thinking that's for the same reason that you just spoke of. Don't want to hold up traffic. But yes, this is not for street legal. This is for any of our citizens that have a golf cart.
I'm just more worried about people being impatient and passing and, not seeing somebody walking across the street or dogs or whatever, because honestly, I go up and down Minuteman almost every day. And there's a lot of impatience, especially during school hours, like school time. It's intense sometimes. Not through maybe the school zone, but as soon as you can get out of there and as soon as on either end, but I don't know, maybe you just go with it and see if it's a problem, but
Well,
it
golf
seems
carts are
like
the quintessential, it's not a problem till it's a problem.
it's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
just like,
I-
maybe you said that they have to go at least 25 in a 30-mile zone. I don't know. I
But
don't
then
know.
who enforces it,
Yeah,
Yeah, that was the big part of,
or have the
Our
capability
reviews.
to do that. I mean, I don't know.
do we have the police force ability to enforce, something that, or even, we didn't want to anticipate something was going to happen. We want to kind of give it a chance, see how it works out, and see if we need to make some adjustments once we roll this program out.
I guess you can wait and see if you get a lot of frustration comments back.
Are there
So
rules?
basically, we don't really have a choice here. I mean, we have to follow the
That's a good
state,
question.
the state's lead on this, which this does, and we have to do something. And I just don't see that. The only thing, again, I'm going to, because I took a look at the spaces for golf carts that were just made on Minuteman.
Yes.
They're not going to work. They'll only work if you can parallel park. Because I would hope that in the future, when the staff or the city or whomever is contemplating making specific parking, that they realize it's a pull-in. It's just they just can't do that kind of a thing.
Okay.
So these are not, they're not gonna work. If for 4 golf carts, unless they go one at a time in, then it's not gonna work.
Okay.
Because if they go, it sticks out.
I will take that back to.
Yeah, take that into consideration.
Yeah,
because it's
into
just the
consideration.
reality.
Absolutely.
I have a question too. So, to go back to the valid form of government issued photographic identification unless otherwise exempt, people with DUIs can have valid forms of identification and still be on the street driving while intoxicated or under the influence. Do we have the necessary staff to monitor that, or?
I'm pretty sure statewide, you're not allowed to drive any motorized vehicle under the influence of,
Even micro motorized?
yeah, under the influence, that's pretty much,
You can get a DUI.
I don't wanna,
off
I don't
work.
wanna, say I'm 100%, but you're not supposed to be driving anything under the influence of alcohol or drugs.
Treated like an automobile.
Yeah.
If a policeman sees you leaving, he stops you and gives you a
Well,
ticket.
Yeah, there are provisions in state law that
Okay.
apply to, vehicles on the roadway that are less than a motor vehicle. So golf carts, motorized scooters, things like that.
So like if you have a DUI and you lost your license, you would not really be allowed to be driving a golf cart in the city of Cocoa Beach.
Oftentimes, when someone is going through that legal situation, there are conditions placed on them for a certain amount of time, so they would be subject to those particular instances. And then I think once they've gone beyond their first offense, there are additional restrictions, and that'll just be up to our police department to.
And unfortunately, tonight on the news, there was a story about a woman who has had her license suspended 4 times for driving under the influence. And she just did it again and killed 2 people.
Wow.
So, it's policing like you police automobiles, but even in policing automobiles. I mean, this is during the day. Somebody's driving under the influence. You can't predict it.
So Garrett, did you say that state law prohibits you from driving under the influence?
In a golf cart on a
Yes.
public roadway, yeah.
Yes.
So I guess the intent of this sounds like is just to up the requirements for, from 14 to 16, because this is already in place.
Yes,
18?
18.
Okay, 18, right. And, but it's not in response to an increase in the number of, golf carts on the road, right?
It's definitely in response to that as well for the city of Cocoa Beach. I mean, we wanted to look at, if we're going to roll out this new map, we wanted to look at our ordinance and make sure we're in conformance with the state, as well as doing, one of the things that came out of the task force was safety was paramount. So we want to make sure that we have our safety in our code in the correct situation as well that meets the state code. So it is in a response to this, but more so to make sure that our code was up to date before we rolled out a new map, which allowed an opportunity for many more golf carts to be on our streets.
But if something happened up the road and we were seeing that there were certain problems, we could then come back and address those problems?
Absolutely. I don't think that anyone here or our residents would allow us not to address if it became an issue. I'm sure of that from my short tenure here in Cocoa Beach. We have some very good residents who, don't mind speaking up and will get this thing in front of commission, in front of you, in front of whoever needs to see it in order to make those changes and make those adjustments, which, again, that's one of the reasons why we kind of want to open it up, see what happens, and then listen to the response.
So what's the chain of command, like, this is a speculative, I guess, that you live somewhere and you notice the same person or group of people doing, maybe not illegal, but dangerous driving on a golf cart? Like, do you notify the city and then they police that area a little bit more to make sure? Or, what are the steps a resident would take? I see them weaving in and out. I'm like, oh, they're gonna get killed. So, what?
I think that's a very good example of when I would make a police report, because one of the things that we've seen over the noise complaint is the more we have police report and documentation and things of that nature, that this is actually something that's going on, and the frequency of it is something that we can document and then say, yes, we need to make some adjustments. If you're just seeing it and you're not making a police report, that's not gonna help us with our data. So I would definitely encourage the citizens to be actively making those reports.
Online form citizens can fill out, or do you have to like go down to the police department and be like, I will live on blah, 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 and insert?
I don't know,
somewhere up top?
there's not an online form now, but we could consider to have something of that
Or
nature.
like some way to prove it, and like not just accuse, but, you know.
Yeah, I don't have an online form, and probably by the time a police car got there, they probably would be gone or
Exactly.
straightened up
That's
their
what I'm saying, like, what's
behavior. But even just having that call come in is a documentation of it. And so the more you document it, maybe it's just the one person at the one house, but then if it's going all over the city, you're getting calls, then, that's something that we would have to come back and look at, for
Are there
sure.
repercussions for one person at one place?
Not sure about that. I think that's, again, we haven't really honed in on penalties, fees, and fines and things of that nature with relation to golf cart use. But I think that we will be doing that in the future as this program gets rolled out.
What would drive that? I mean, would maybe there be some complaints come in the city and they get documented, and then the city would come back and say, well, we need to look at some steps we could take?
Yes,
Is that how it would then come back here?
I would anticipate that that's how it would come back here, because I'm sure, again, our police force, fire, when we have incidents, they bring those things forward as well. Which is why we had the micromobility committee task force, because of some of the things that citizens were seeing with some of the scooters and things of that nature. So that portion will be coming back to you guys soon as well. We started with this portion, which was the golf carts, because we already had something in place for golf carts. It was a little bit, and even with that previous golf cart map, it was the testing phase to see how it was gonna work. And so we said, let's get the golf cart piece out of the way, and then we'll bring back micromobility devices.
Now, the map will be part of the ordinance, is that correct?
It goes in resolution. So the ordinance and the resolution, they'll come together though. This will kind of roll out at the same time.
Okay, because in looking at it, we got some odd disconnected at each end that don't really make sense. Might need to clean those up. Also, under the special conditions, first off, special is misspelled.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Special is misspelled, but it also says in those special conditions that drivers must hold a valid driver's license, which is in conflict with what we just discussed.
Yeah, the map that I received wasn't, I couldn't edit it, so, but that will be amended to match.
Okay.
And I guess in looking at it, we've got some just single streets that, let's take Surf Drive, for instance. You can't really go anywhere. Is there a reason that streets like that were included as?
Yes, we talked about that extensively, and we decided that we didn't want to, when you open up something, we consider it opening up to the community. We didn't want to limit the people on Surf Drive. Yes, they can't go anywhere, but they could go to their neighbor's house.
Okay.
So we wanted to give them the opportunity, if they wanted to take a golf cart down the street, they can do that.
Those are the places that I would suggest signage, that they know that when they get to the end of the street, they can't go anywhere beyond that. Because quite frankly, they're gonna look at this and they're gonna say, oh, well, I live over here on, behind Publix, and I can take mine all the way to the beach and not pay attention to. So some of those types of things.
Yes.
Okay. Any further questions? All right, do I have a motion?
Oh, well, okay, I'll make the motion. It's not as if we have a big choice here. As soon as I find it, oh, here it is, okay. I move to forward to the city commission the proposed amendments to Code of Ordinances, section 15-47, with a recommendation of approval.
Do you have a second?
I'll second
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 4-0. Next up is, next up is the review of the planning board operating procedures. We passed these out last meeting, and I did have an old set that I passed out, but these are the most recent version of the standard operating procedures. Did everybody have a chance to review these? Any questions, comments, concerns, suggested changes? Yes.
it. I have the old copies that I wrote my comments on, so I'm not exactly sure I have the latest and greatest.
Should be in.
Oh, wait, there we go. I see it. Let me see if I can do this. Let's see here. On number, so if somebody else has questions, they can go first, because I can translate. They're different than they used to be.
I just wanted to know if there's it says a board member may place an item on the agenda up to 10 days before the meeting. What's the last minute rule to put something on the agenda? Because sometimes you'll look at it one day and there'll be like 2 items, and then meeting day, there'll be more items. So what's the rule on that?
I haven't had anywhere we've thrown them on last minute, so I'm not quite sure, because usually I know I have 30 days prior for planning board apps for outside kind of items, for like the drip, for example, or things like that. But for here, I mean, a planning board where it talks about you guys could put it on, 10 days in advance, that would come to me, and we try to have the packets sent out at least a week in advance. So there's never been any changes in my, purview that have been from when I sent it out a week in advance and then it changed. So I'm not.
Yeah, it just seems like I looked at the, I looked at the planning board agenda over the weekend, but then I looked at it again. I think it was this morning. It looked like there was another item on there, unless maybe I didn't finish reading everything. So, okay.
One thing that I had, and I guess this is really more of a question for you, Tabitha and Tonza, under item 3, training and orientation, talks about the training that's required, and then the training is to be completed within 1 month after appointment to the board. Is that sufficient time for you guys to do that?
So that was, I know we generally have the large kind of thing that everybody comes in, and that was the big 4-hour that we held with Wade.
Mhm.
And we usually have all of our appointments in that part. If we were to do it where, say, we would get the alternate, because we're still needing an alternate. If
Uh-huh.
we had the alternate, it would probably be the more condensed version that we have. You saw we have the PowerPoint, everything's ready to go, so we could easily do that kind
Okay.
of thing.
I just want to,
Yeah.
just because it's written here, put an
Right,
undue
yeah, I
burden
mean, I
on you
don't
guys.
know with Garrett, I know, because Wade kind of helps us with those kind of things, if you feel that would need to be expanded a bit on anyway.
There are
but-
all sorts of ways to come into compliance with
Yeah.
state ethics training, the 4-hour class that you all sat through with Wade. So if there was a new member to the board, the whole board wouldn't have to have another briefing. That could just be a one-on-one kind of training opportunity. But yeah, so that within 1 month of appointment after the board, that's a yearly requirement, so we try to do it as the board sits.
Okay. That's it. I just didn't want to put an undue burden on you guys. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Well, I was wondering, like, tonight, when we were hearing about the drift. Now, people that came up and spoke, weren't they supposed to state their residence?
So they were
Or is that for
applicants
members of
for,
the-
they were the applicants for the project themselves are on the thing, so they're not public comment necessarily
Okay.
here. So
Okay.
I think that part is when they come in after.
All right.
So said.
Most of my comments were fixed in this. I just had one question on the administration, that section in B. The board correspondence is forwarded to the city commission through the city manager. So does that happen, just me not knowing, do you automatically send them our minutes and decisions or anything like that? Or is it through the city manager or?
When it comes to the consent agenda, and Tanja, correct me if I'm wrong, when they have these items for recommendation for approve, it comes a recommendation for approve by the planning board, but I think it's the representative is like you and the city manager to do those. I think the only additional thing is we talked previously where you have the representative. I'm not quite sure on the top of my head where it is. I think it's the next one, or in D, where if you have
Yeah,
that right
attends the
to
meeting.
appoint
Mhm.
someone, we went over that with the parking garage for everything, but
Okay.
yeah, so that is kind of how on the agenda and stuff it gets pushed through.
Did you want to speak to that here as far as, the city, the forwarding correspondence?
That's more of an administrative kind of item. I would think that the clerk would finalize all the documents and keep them as a public record, and then when it's ready to go for the board for any kind of approval, then it would be furnished to the board, published on the agenda.
Because the packets that you guys get, I don't know if you've never seen, Robin is CC'd on those as well. Like she's included in all of our packets and the minutes and stuff. Our minutes, probably tomorrow or Thursday will be prepped and sent to the city clerk, to Lori, to be distributed out.
Is that the type of correspondence you were referring
Yeah, it just says any correspondence, and I was wondering if.
Yeah, I don't necessarily, when you guys forward me emails or the packets or something, they're in a folder, but I don't necessarily send that directly to them.
Mainly if they get the highlights of the planning board routinely, if we don't attend and go to the meeting and represent, do they still get them pretty,
Yes, they
routinely, so
get-
they see everything that
Yeah,
comes
like,
in?
so it's like when we are
City manager.
forwarding the
Gotcha.
next items, yeah, the drift, where your recommendation is to kind of streamline that language a little better and everything, that will be part of what she receives for her.
Yeah, something came up tonight that reminded me of an issue that I've been talking about for a couple of months now, and I'm trying to figure out how I can word. Could we add something like it's the board's responsibility to review possible additions to the planning process to keep up with the current dynamics of economic development? And what I'm getting at is, how do I factor in, I would love to see, like tonight, I think Loie brought up, is anything here affordable? I would love
No.
to see the planning, didn't you bring that up on the rent?
Yeah, I did, but no, the answer to your question
Well,
is
yeah,
no.
but see, what I would like to see is maybe we now are in a position to say to applicants, we have a requirement here, and that requirement is a 2%, 3%, 5%, doesn't make any difference to me, set aside for affordable units. Now, I don't know what the median income, what's the median income of Brevard County? Does anybody know?
I don't know.
All right, let's
think
just,
it's
for
around
conversation's
70.
sake, it's 40,000, it's 32,000, or $40,000. Well, 80% of that is $32,000. So therefore, and that comes out to quickly, 1/3 of that is $10,000. That comes out to about $900 a month for rent. That's set aside, in this instance, if it was like 2% of the units, it's 4 units. 4 units in your development are set aside as affordable. And obviously, they're not going to be the 3 bedrooms and the big 2 bedrooms, and they're going to be a modest size apartment. But if a developer knows in advance, they're able to design their unit, so maybe where a typical market rent 2-bedroom is 1,100 square feet, the affordable unit is 900 square feet or 800 square feet. So it makes it, I mean, I understand there's economics here to building these units, but can we do, I mean, it's done in other places, it's done in New York all the time, and it's a 10% set aside.
I don't think you can unilaterally, as a board, change the city's
No, but
requirements.
can we investigate those kinds of things to present to the commission, who are making the ultimate decision that, yes, we're going to change whatever we have to change, the planning code, whatever we have to change.
We did do it for
to
them.
do
They
that.
asked for the density, or whatever the density change, and we asked for a little
I
more.
mean,
of another
it's
stuff.
just, it's an economic reality that's happening more and more and more as prices go up and up and up and up. And, you know, I moved here 7 years ago, and it wasn't an issue. Well, it is now. And I think that we have to be conscious of our teachers and our police people and our fire people, and provide housing for them, and not, you know, housing that is just like everybody else's housing, just maybe a little smaller.
Yeah, so as a board, you all have, under your existing, kind of mission statement here with the city, you guys have the opportunity to have, board discussions on items just like that, and working in conjunction with staff to make recommendations to the commission. I think that would be a good thing for you all to chat with staff about one-on-one, to see the feasibility, the timeline to get that kind of information together. But that's certainly something you all can do under your existing.
I realize it's not going to happen overnight,
Yeah.
but I think it's something that, we need to be prepared for, because it's going to get more expensive before it gets any cheaper to live here.
Yeah, I think that would be something that, again, like Kara said, we could have those discussions, draw up something like a discussion that you guys want to have here in the planning board meeting, and that would be an item that we would add to the agenda and go through it in that way.
And if those items, like if something like that was ever built into our comprehensive plan or our code language and things like that, then yes, when we had a development that came in, it would be part of your guys' purview to make sure that those items were met. Because you're reviewing to make sure that,
Yes.
the site plans and stuff are got. So because it's not currently there, it's not something we could really add in for you guys
Right.
to do right now. But if we move forward with a discussion to kind of working this in and bringing it to the attention of the commission and seeing how that would all work, to get that in, and it was placed in, then yes, those would be items that you would be able to.
Particularly when we have a situation where we're giving an applicant something.
Yeah.
Well, we want something back, and that's what it is. It's housing for people who, are only earn,
Or
and I guess,
solar on
again, I'm
every
just
roof.
guessing that the median income is 40,000. For people who earn toward $32,000 a year with 3 people or 4 people.
Wouldn't that start with comp plan?
That'd be-
Something like that.
That'd be a great place to start. If you had, lower requirements in your zoning requirements in a code, you'd want the comp plan to reflect those changes first, so that when you go to the analysis, when you're looking at rezoning or you're looking at adding requirements onto developments, you want that to be reflected in your comp plan.
Yeah, and I say that because number 4 says to oversee the periodic evaluation and amendment of the city's comprehensive plan is required by state law.
Which we are upcoming on our re-review and rewrite and update of our comp plan, because it's a 2025 comp plan. So we are getting close to creating those, having that perfect time to really talk about those kind of changes and stuff. And I think even at the state level, those things are changing with like the Live Local Act and things like that were going on. So there's a lot of stuff going on that it would definitely be something that's brought up as we start on our comp plan revisions, which would be a perfect place for
Good.
that.
Well, how would that be different than, we had the gentleman up here with the parking garage, and I asked him, if he was going to competitively price his parking with City of Cocoa Beach. And he shot back at me that well, that's kind of like none of your business how I price my parking spaces. So it's like, how would that be different than
I
requiring?
think you'd be a little more hard pressed to try to regulate the cost of a parking space as opposed to the cost of housing, because you've got a reason to do that. Your reason is that you're trying to provide housing for your service people who you need, who you don't want to have to live in Palm Bay and drive 50 miles to get here. I mean, that's insane. And there should be, and by the way, in where I come from, if you didn't do it in your buildings, I mean, my last building was a tower for Ritz-Carlton. Well, obviously, my client did not want to put the affordable housing units in there, and that was fine with the city. He owed them 60 units. Build it someplace else. But it has to be in the city, it has to have transportation, it has to have walk-to-ability, it has to have this and it has to have that. And they did it. There's a lot of ways you can work this kind of thing. It's critical because more and more people are getting priced out.
I'm not saying I disagree with anything you're saying. All I'm saying is that the same argument that was used, well, that's our business, might be posed with trying to do rent controls for.
It's not rent control.
Yeah, it's not rent control.
Not rent control, because that's not subsidized housing. It's affordable housing. The government isn't paying part of their rent in affordable housing programs. They're paying for it. It's just priced at an affordable rate that meets the median income, whether it's 100% of the median income or 80% or 90% of the median income of the county.
This is a conversation that we need to
Right.
continue, but not at this point in time. Any other changes or comments, concerns that you'd like to see to
I just
the
have,
operating
this
procedures?
may just be an update in the meeting section. I think all the meetings are now on YouTube, is that true? It's not the government, I mean, it may just be it's kind of a small thing,
Yeah.
but I think they're not really on the government television channel anymore. It's just, it's through YouTube and there's an address.
I just updated our agendas to only reflect the YouTube address, because it had all the different stuff that we weren't utilizing.
All that stuff in a way. Thanks.
So do you have this where you can update that?
Yeah, I have a Word with this.
Okay, so if you could update that and bring it back to us in the next meeting, and we can finalize it.
Is that the only area that we discussed, I believe?
I think so. Okay. All right. Next up is staff and city attorney reports. Mr. Austin?
I have nothing to report.
All right.
Thanks for having me, guys.
We just have our development
Yes.
services quarterly report, just to kind of have this every quarter. It's part of kind of what we were looking at in the SOP for you guys to review these. Just basic from April, this one's for quarter 2, so April to June. 1,082 records created, 1,373 inspections completed with 825 permits issued, creating revenue of $190,716.53. And in the next page, we have started a quarterly just comparison, so you can see, we'll have the one for the whole year. A little bit of drop in the records created, but more inspections completed and less permits issued. And then, this is actually, this did not pull over the right one.
No, it says no inspection.
I do apologize. That did not pull over the correct information. Our revenue was it had increased, because I believe it was about 162,000 from quarter 1 to the 190 here. So we did have an increase in revenue. There was we saw a surge in kind of permits issued and things like that, and the revenue created. I do apologize that it is not quarterly comparison. But the next one, the vacation rental, is updated correctly, because I remember the last time we came to you guys, we had about maybe $7,000 in revenue from our vacation rental program, and we've started really kind of pushing a little more onto that. I think we had 12 records created first quarter, this quarter 44, with 16,950 in revenue from our vacation rental registrations, and we anticipate to see that number continue to rise. our Rentalscape company that we are partnered with to collect the data. They're kind of fishing and identifying properties that are in Cocoa Beach to see which ones are short-term rentals, and we are taking that list to compare it with our list of who is registered. And if you fall, you don't match up to that list and you have not registered, sending out the notices saying, hey, we believe you're a short-term rental, please sign up. That is starting to really develop. We're working on pulling our data that we have to give to them, and we're having some issues matching the different, what they need with what we have and kind of updating that for them. But so definitely anticipate for next quarter just to see that continue to grow and that program continue to, kind of flourish and get rolled out.
So we'll see inspections go up or no?
So the inspections kind of vary because it depends on the type of project and things like that, and the amount of, where they records created or people submitting for that permit, whereas and I'm not sure if
For the
this one
B&B,
is
Airbnb.
following, I'm not sure if this one pulls, I believe this is just building permit inspections and not
Yes.
inspections for the vacation rentals.
Got it.
Yes.
So that would kind of be separate from
separate.
that, yeah. So we wouldn't necessarily see an increase in inspections due to those items. That is all. Any questions for the permits or the vacation rentals or that program or anything?
Previously, we had gotten kind of a summary at the end of some of the major projects that were ongoing, like the
yes.
Weston, the surf, some of those type, kind of where they were.
Activity report that we go through.
Don't have it, no, but we'll make sure we add that from now on.
Okay.
The projects that's moving forward. But we just did the drift
Yeah,
and
drift is good. We have, I don't know if it's not necessarily one that you guys will see. They're more small scale on the nature for projects, but
Cottage
Cosmic
Grove.
Tiki, they had received their special exception
Yeah.
to allow the outdoor recreation for the swimming pool and the arcade and things. They have submitted their site plan for the pool and everything to go. That's just down from the surf. The apartments on 880 are going through their site plan. Westgate, I think, is still finalizing their stuff for the DA. We hope to bring those up to you guys soon for the pier project and everything.
yes.
That's just a couple months away with getting to you guys.
Did I see a for sale sign on the church property?
I'm not sure.
If they did.
I live south, so I don't generally
First
drive
time
that way.
Yeah, they were here. They were here,
The
right?
Diamond Bay
Okay.
property?
Yeah, Diamond Bay. They were here.
I did see that, yes.
I could swear
that.
I saw a for sale sign.
I saw,
Yeah,
I think
ditto.
we did see some new signage out there.
I saw
Maybe
some
they're selling it.
advertisement signs for the engineer and the architect.
No, now I saw for just
Oh,
for the
really?
first time, like a week ago, I saw
Yeah,
a
I'm
for
not
sale
sure.
sign.
For the church, not for what they're,
For the development, on the development,
For the
not the
development.
church.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And then did that end up going to commission?
I'll look at that
yet?
again.
Yes, that's gone to commission and has been approved. The destination downtown is going to commission on the 20th,
It's the parking garage.
the parking garage. And, what are we?
And,
we're-
Weston is still in its demo phase. We haven't received anything new on that one.
Yes, Weston is still in demo.
I think that's really.
About,
we don't
what is it,
have too-
99 and 66 North Atlantic?
Nothing new on that.
Nothing's really going on with that one. They're from Canada, and I think they had some problems with financing, so it's kind of
Is that the
on
one
hold.
next to the hotel up there, next to the,
Next to the
Surf,
surf.
yes.
It's going
no,
in.
no, up, is,
It's the old Connors Wealth Management.
Wouldn't it
That's
just be
the
a
Cosmic
drive-through
Tiki.
bank
It's between
area?
those.
what was the proposal? The two big hotels across from the churches. The property was
Marriott
next to
and-
those hotels.
oh.
The Marriott-
They had
the Marriott up
median
there?
In the middle with the residents.
And there was a proposal, maybe it was at the city commission.
Oh,
not
you're
here.
talking about the end of Surf Drive?
Are you talking
Oh,
about,
on Surf Drive down there, I don't think I have anything new on that one. at the
No,
end
it
of
was
Surf
more-
Drive for the condos.
More north.
Yeah,
Closer towards
it's
Cape
by
Canaveral.
the,
you're talking about the
It's-
old Holiday Inn, way old Holiday Inn?
it's
International
right
Palms.
next to the, what do you call the something suites that just got redone, oh God, I passed these things
There's
a
a
million
park right
times a
there at
day.
the end, right before you get to like Mexico's Grill. Right before there. There's townhomes and then there's Park property,
two
and
big
then on that back
hotels.
end, there's a
Two big hotels.
I'm not quite sure, but
There's one
another one
here.
that's thought of is
No,
Glass
no,
Bank
no,
has
no,
submitted
that's
for
not-
their
Yeah.
variance, so the variance
That's
goes to
every day.
commission, but when we do the site plan stuff, it would come to you. But
What's
the-
that?
the old
It's
Glass
called
Bank building-
Stina.
Oh, okay.
Stina's the new.
No, it's
like
further north.
boutique, with some retail spaces,
There's the
but they're going to
there's the
commission for their
Hilton
variance,
Garden
and then
Inn,
after
and then
that.
go further north.
forward
There's
to
two
site
big
plan
hotels
stuff.
there.
What's that one near, like, South 14th Street, Atlantic Avenue, South 13th, 14th? Just a vacant piece of,
It's like across from
88.
Sylvia Way.
880?
No, that's
Over
more
Nosh,
north
restaurant
than
Nosh's.
14th.
Yeah,
it's
across the street.
something the board had,
Yeah, we
with
can't
adjustments, had
think of the
considered,
restaurant.
gosh,
I mean,
like
the two
2 years
hotels.
ago, and
We had
they
somebody
were
come
allowed to
and
move
moved here
forward
the
with
other
it,
place.
but
They're just selling it?
they're going to develop it into a condo.
I'm not sure. I hadn't
Does that
seen
ring a bell?
Okay.
Well,
But we'll have a more formal presentation of our projects next time. We'll make sure we add that to our agenda.
I know that was there, I'm not quite sure. where that-
Well, I take it there's no general public comment since there's no general public here. Any final board comments, Ms. Snyder?
Nothing from me, thank you.
No, I'm kind of going off what Marge was saying. So the process is if we have something like affordability or green space or anything like that, we can always bring it here as a potential topic to do research and then come back and like talk to, or even come in like you did with proposed wording,
Yeah.
even wherever you think it belongs.
Yes.
Because, yeah, there are a couple of things that I've been thinking too.
The Hampton Inn, next to the
Oh,
Hampton
yeah.
Inn.
I definitely, feel like if you send us an email over to, myself and Tabitha, especially with your comments about the things that you would like to bring forward with the planning board, it will give us the opportunity to start that research process. as
I mean,
well as
one,
review
I'll just
with
tell you
council.
now, it's like the green space is, I know we kind of give it lip service and you hope that people put green space in their big developments, but it's pretty minimal.
Yeah,
When you
they
get
do
right
the
down
lone
to
deck
it.
design
And
and
I've
that's
heard
it.
for years, well, there's no buildable land anymore. Okay, so we've built probably at least 8 new big places since I've been here in the last few years, so, there's always buildable land, and so today was a good example. All that area is all empty, it's all gonna be filled. The one behind the church, all empty, it's all gonna get filled, there's gonna have no green space. I just would like to see if we can do something to promote or incentivize. I think we have something that in certain areas, you can only have 55% impervious, that might be a residential, impervious
Yeah.
is residential, but something like that for bigger developments to get a little more serious about, leaving trees and,
Yeah, part of our landscape code, we can take a look, if you guys want to take
Yeah.
a look at our landscape code and review that and see, where we can beef it up a little bit.
I look at Area 142, which is all astroturf, there's not a tree in sight. I'm like, can we do something about all the new places that don't, we don't really have anything enforceable, I
I
guess.
think you
is all I'm
risk
saying.
people wanting to go up further when you take away their horizontal space. But
That's why I'm asking
That's
your
been
help.
an argument, yeah.
Yeah.
That developer of that, near the Hampton.
Ms. Bogue, anything you?
I don't have anything else to say.
Okay, the last thing I had, looking back at some of my notes in, I guess it was November or December of 2019, the board had talked about, and staff was gonna start looking at doing a ped and bike plan for the city, and then, COVID kind of messed all that up, and I think it kind of got dropped. Is that something we can take a look at from a perspective of, we need a master plan for the city for sidewalks and sidewalk improvements instead of just hopscotching around, making improvements
so
here or there, making sure that they all connect. So if you guys could take a look at that and see about what would it take to do that. And we got some time, and maybe it has to wait till next year, and we can get that in the budget, but to start to look at that. I'll be honest, my wife has fallen 3 times, and I've had some friends that have fallen because they're walking along, the sidewalk ends, they try to get to the street, and the grass is wet, and they slip and fall. You know, we've got sidewalks that go up halfway the block on one side, and they continue up the block on the other side of the street, and it's, our sidewalks are a disaster. And we need to take a look at that.
Well, I have some maps. During the micromobility task force, we took a look at some of that type of stuff as well to see how can we help to allow some of these micromobility devices to utilize our sidewalks, because we don't want them on a narrow sidewalk and pedestrians are there and they're moving at this pace and the pedestrians. So we were definitely looking at the sidewalks during that task force. So that would be something that we could definitely bring forward as well. Look at our city maps of where our sidewalks are and where the improvements need to be, as well as where they're scheduled to be, because we have a map that shows where they're scheduled to make some improvements.
As I say, I walk around, especially walk around downtown constantly, and, you know, we see a driveway ramp that didn't look that bad. They got completely tore out and replaced, and then the one right next to it has been destroyed, and it's still there. So, you know, developing a plan of attack around that. What are the highest priority areas? Where do we need to focus at, instead of just hopscotching around town, and really focus our efforts in one particular area, or you know, an area of high need, and attack
Finding
it
out if
that
there's
way.
any federal or state money available.
Exactly.
By the way, did you hear on the news tonight, FEMA's out of money, or running out of money? And our two representatives from Florida in Congress and the Senate have introduced legislation to get $11 billion moved over into FEMA in anticipation of hurricane season.
All right, that's all I had. Currently, our next meeting is scheduled for August